If I make more jokes at the Greeks' expense, the Cypriots are going to come and give me some sort of award. The Turks will make me president. There's nothing like geopolitical humor. Do you realize that other than gossip, there's only two things you can talk about? Yourself or what you know, with you extracted from what's known. Man is the only creature with no completed model to work from, a fact never taken into common consideration save by the more alert. As soon as men became conscious enough to invent language, one of the first words they came up with was consciousness, so as to quickly try and nail down this elusive quality. To keep from thinking, one man would sing to himself. Then to drown out the singing, he'd let his mind ramble on. Just as with crippled, unfocused potatoes, men come in three varieties. Those who've tripped, those who deny they have, and those with eyes turned far away who are about to. One man was visited by energy from another world. Everyone is, but most people's doorbell doesn't work. Definitions. Thought, a random act of thinking. Thinking, random acts of thought. Any questions? No, sir. Dismissed. Well, if it's not political humor bombing, it's marine humor bombing. A cannibal cannot pride a parade unless it is an invented one, nor a plagiarist lead a pride save one of intellectual lions. The weather is periodical, the sky, its background, omnipresent. There are two types of consciousness possible. The first is the collective consciousness of man, common and natural to all, and the other an individual one, brought about and held only by persistent personal effort. One day, one guy, after experiencing again a trying time in his personal relationships, thought, geez, women are crazy. Then after a moment added, well, hell, so are men. And after another brief reflection thought, everybody's crazy. Then had a sudden cold shiver and thought, shit, then who will I date? And coyly looked at himself and replied, well, hey there, big boy, you're just my type. The war. Reoccurring flashes of gunfire, first here, then there, would light up the otherwise dark sky. For the sake of the simple, part of the city sophisticate's job is to deny the significance of the obvious. Well, actually, for the sake of all concerned. Man's institutional campaigns. The less sure the undertaking, the more important is costumes. One man poked so many holes in life that, just like a tattered cloth, it finally just fell apart. And all of the ordinary people who happened to be about at the time were not all that amused or enthused by the event. Conversation. To get people to do something they don't have to do, you've got to tell them that they need to do it. Well, that certainly seems obvious enough. Oh, it does? Men's individual campaigns. The less sure men of what they say, the more urgent they will make it sound. As soon as men were conscious enough to leave the original silent garden of paradisical comfort, one of the first things they did was to begin to dream of a new one. From this grew both the idea of a pleasing life after death and the notion of secret mystery schools. Often, just as he was about to be impressed by one of the physical spectacles occurring in the invented, unique world of man, this one chap would stop short and suddenly instead be impressed by his own mental capacity for observing and processing same. The difference between those who worship at the feet of man, and this being the difference between those who worship at the feet of man and those interested in his potential talent. City leadership and ethics. For an alpha wolf, there is no such thing as the morally right thing to do. Consciousness not bound by thought renders one homeless, objectively, beneficially homeless. The simple take the longevity of a belief as its proof. What other choices do they have? One man attended a mystery school wherein his first year's textbook was of 1,000,000 pages. His second year's, 10,000. His third, 100. And for his final year, 1 blank page. At graduation ceremonies, as each student was handed his diploma, he would in turn say to the dean, "I knew that was coming." Redundancy. Thy name is the measured tempo of normal progress. Those who debate whether there is life after death reveal their ignorance of interminable genetics, which is to say they still don't realize that life is alive. As per some popular belief, there are those here on earth from other worlds. And hey, you could be one of them, for all you know, which about covers it. One man began to picture the effort to be continually aware of his own consciousness as the effort to swat a universe full of mosquitoes, one at a time. A lament among some of the few. It's not so bad being blind as long as you never look around and notice it. Only the simple believe in contradictions. Personal consciousness. The only thing that when talked about disappears. The rodent laboratory march. Rats aware that their traps will not struggle for freedom. Do you realize that there is no such thing as a healthy 20-year-old saint or a wise, depleted 60-year-old? Yet men will credit a late-running train for having the intelligence to miss a wreck that occurred at an intersection had it been on time. All in all, alert travelers on this journey would be extremely hesitant to claim credit for any apparent advancement on their part unless it is occurring at that very moment under the full steady glare of their own consciousness. Gamblers stole the idea of a floating crap game. Men recount myths of mighty battles with physical foes as a metaphor for the inner conflict with unknown invisible ones. Part of language's purpose is to give man the impression that his mental activities are linear and sequential. A new monk asked an old master, "What is truly the most difficult aspect of the struggle for a state of controlled personal consciousness?" And the elder replied, "It's total unnecessariness." And while you may believe that you've heard this a sufficient number of times before, trust me, you haven't. Life is not a struggle. Death is. And obviously, it's not. Neural etymology. Consciousness, a butterfly. Thought, a pen. Many who undertake a search for the transcendental path are in fact seeking adjustment to their mental autopilot. The simple have no morals, only fears. Those seeking the enlightening experience fall into two categories: those who expect to find it without and those who believe they will find it within. Both are partially mistaken. So reflected one man involved in the transcendental search. It's understandable that the effort to achieve stable personalized consciousness is thought by so many to be a secret activity. Most of the time it remains secret even from me. Follow that. The apparent search for cure. If you're sick and speak favorably of your treatment, you don't want to get well. One man had a governor on his car, and it worked so efficiently that he finally began to think of the governor as the car. Oh, yeah? From our city dictionary, politics, stickball for grown-up boys. Compared to routine notions regarding freedom of will, life is scripted. And while this is still not exactly correct, it's as much so as the other idea. Trying to concentrate on what others have to say about consciousness can keep you from it. The solitude of the mythical warrior. It's lonely having no one to fight but yourself. Not necessarily not.
No.
In the sky above his head, one man found many holes, and the more he tried to repair them, the greater became its obvious futility. In the sky above one man's head appears many holes, but these are local rents and of no personal significance. What's behind and beyond them is the omnipresent universal whole. The awakened have been described as those with no reason to live and no reason to die. Not really, I just made that up. Getting there. When it comes to travel, the consciousness explorers don't simply want to go from point A to point B. If you actually listen real closely to what other people say, most of it doesn't actually make any sense, which could be why most people don't actually listen to what most other people say. What sort of thing is a thing that when examined ceases to be and becomes but a shadow? What better description of ordinary consciousness than the inability to see and make use of the obvious? One man concluded that he was master of reality and was able to pull it off only by not letting anyone else know. One man was an unemployed him. The king is the king, the people, only the homeless are at home wherever. And finally, entitled Only. Only the enlightened can dance on the sun. Only they wish to. To try and cover up the fact that we lost tonight's script for the show, I was going to say in an offhand manner that's almost reached the point of what else can I say? What was frightening, I was afraid I was going to look in there and be Senior Winces was in there. Would you like to lift up your toilet lid and holler, is it all right? It's all right. My excuse was going to be to say, well, after you've said so much about getting close to what this is all about, how much more can you say? And then jumping right out at me was that short news item 95083-22, redundancy. Thy name is the measured tempo of normal progress. Holding these in perhaps a dramatic and spurious show that I might eventually use them. They also make nice props. Drive home a point. Look thoughtful. Like you're playing second base. One here I dropped on the floor. There's a man involved in this. I think I'll rephrase it as when it fell into the lateral filing system. One guy that says he's involved with the great, or the transcendental whatever. And it says that he finds it no wonder that it's this effort to achieve some state of unnatural, some personalized consciousness. That he says it's no wonder that so often, by so many times, by so many people, it's been thought of as being some secret activity. He thought, well, that's no wonder, because almost all the damn day, he considers himself, made it stronger, a guy who considered himself a mystic. And he says, well, it's no wonder that people think of it as being some secret activity. Hell, other than 2 or 3 seconds a day, it remains secret from me. Which is simply to say, I forget about it. Once you find out, which I'm not ever going to, well, I have no intention of making it too crude, but once you realize what the whole idea of at least one step before enlightenment, awakening, producing some new state of consciousness, once you understand that it is solely, if anywhere, in your hands, it is nowhere else, in a sense there is no help available, in an even greater sense, there's hardly anyone on this planet that has any idea of what it is. That does not belie the fact that you can, in any group of people of any size, that you can say, you can stand and holler, I wish I was more conscious. I wish I was a better person intellectually or spiritually. Or get right down to it. You stand and say, I've decided my one aim in life is to be enlightened. Anywhere on this planet, taking into consideration they'd have to translate it if you didn't speak the language. You get a crowd of a couple hundred people, some guy's going to step up and go, well, boy, are you in luck. That being, there is no shortage. You would think that my comment was absolutely a bald-faced fallacy, because there seems to be people on every street corner, ranging from the more simplistic attempts at this kind of effort, which we could look at as being religious, to those who actually have signs staked out saying so-and-so school of meditation, or so-and-so the path of enlightenment, the mystical path to awakening. The world's full of them. Notwithstanding that fact, that even I'm aware of that, I'm telling you a fact that they don't know. And it's one of those great facts, like all good facts, is you don't have to take my word for it. All you got to do is check with you. Check with this man right there. You are that man. That is, hardly anyone on this planet has any idea what it is. And we could debate the idea of, or we could debate my comment of having hardly any idea what it is. Because we have reams and reams of books and manuscripts, recorded messages of people who have done everything. They have played to connect the dots, or they've set up the kind of picture. They've got all the holes around it. And if you look at it in a certain way, you'd go, well, that's down there a description of being more conscious. They've got everything but the one thing. So I too am aware of that. That people not only say that they are involved with it or interested in it or can help you do it, there are descriptions, very common, they're everywhere, that are that close to being what it is. But that's no sort of progress, because they were that close 5,000 years ago. There's always that one part missing. That's the part. That's the part that if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. And if you do not realize what it takes, it won't get done. Because you can listen to somebody tell you forever, whatever they had to say, that you must remember the name of God, you must remember your own existence with every breath, you must remember, or you must dwell upon the love of Allah for you, or the love of the universe. You must dwell upon you must try and picture love as a seed in your heart which will grow and bloom and take you to a higher level of consciousness. They can tell you all of that. There are people who have devoted their lives to pursuing such as that. There are people who devote their life to the church, to attempting to pray, to meditate. And I will again point out that they are, if you want to look at it that way, they get this close. They always have been. To describe what it would be to be more conscious is not that hard. Now, not completely, I repeat. It's always that close. There's always that much missing, which is you. The descriptions are not hard. They're everywhere. They range from, if you understand it aright, from someone describing what it would take to be a real good Catholic or Jew or Muslim. Their descriptions are of a person more conscious. But leaving that aside, when they get to specifically trying to describe, people say, well, here's what it would be. It's a good thing you people got here, because I've been studying the great mystical secret works of all time. And I can tell you now, there's no doubt, I studied with yogi so-and-so, and I can tell you this. The state of Buddhahood, the state of enlightenment, the state of an altered condition of consciousness, of awareness, is, and they give you a description. No one will describe it to you who understands it. Once you understand it, you understand then every description you ever heard and read was a waste of time. Well, it could have been interesting, I know all that, entertaining, and you could always say, had it not been for all of that, I would not be where I am. Yeah. But you can look at death going, well, thank God I'm finally about to die. A doctor says, well, you got a week to go. And you think, well, Jesus, finally. And you think, well, what a kind of boring trip life's been. But then you can always say, well, had it not been for life, I wouldn't be here about to die. So the point is, always look on the bright side, darn it. Well, straighten it out. It was in there somewhere. Everything, right up to the point of connecting all the dots, everything that would take out the amount that I'm saying is lacking between all descriptions from anybody. Anybody. It's not that some descriptions are good and some bad, or that some Muslims 600 AD had it correctly, whereas some Zen monks 700 years later got it twisted up. It's not that. They're all on the same level, which is what makes, again, part of the imaginary search for some transcendental reality and some ability to pursue a higher or a different state of consciousness, to look for it as being possible, that it's existing out there somewhere and you must find it. That is part of what keeps that going, is these great descriptions. And they're all around the verge. But anyway, when you realize, I was going to quote this guy again, since I gave you a cheer-up call. Here's the cold face and slap of reality again. Here's a guy down there in that news item. Make it stronger. A guy involved, as far as he's concerned, with the real mystical activity. And he says, is it any wonder that for so long, so many people look upon all this as being some secret activity? It's no wonder. Because here I am, I consider, if I had to give him a name for myself, at least to me, what am I? What is I want is to be more awake, to be conscious, etc. So here I am involved with it, as far as I can tell, as far as I can do it. But from that view, he is saying it's no wonder. No wonder people keep thinking it's some sort of secret activity. Because hell, except for a couple of seconds a day, it's a secret for me. Which is simply, I forget about it. That when asked, if somebody said, tell the truth upon pain of death, who are you? Don't put down an attorney or an accountant or a Catholic or a Jew. Actually, what are you? And you put a mystic. That's it. You can put that, I'm saying that that's what you do to yourself. That's how strong it would be to you. And yet, if you get anywhere close to being one, you realize that you're pathetic. And that's not to make you feel bad. You're not a sinner. If you're going to enjoy that, you should go back and be a Catholic, or go back to your religion, or take a note from one of the New Zions now, the Search for Cure, that says if you can speak favorably at all of your treatment, you don't want to get well. It's only mystics that hate the treatment. Other people use illness, both physically and metaphorically. They use illness as a kind of hobby. Notice how common it is that people love to discuss their doctor. They'll go into great details about the kind of car my doctor drives. They start off there talking about, somebody says, well, I'm real sick, and they start talking about this. You go, yeah, and you mention something like you may have cancer, and at first it sounds real bad, or you got some continuing illness that you can't get cured. And they go, well, what are you doing for it? And you go, well, I found this new doctor. And they'll start bragging about the doctor and what kind of size Mercedes he has. They'll start talking about how much it cost. They'll talk about how sick they've been. Everybody just nods along. Oh, God. And the sicker you were, but you speak favorably, and the treatment is almost as bad as the illness. You have to take this medicine and go through these cat and pet scans, and you get sick at your stomach. And you just kind of, you're so happy about it. And they go, well, how often is the treatment? And you say, well, originally they were once a month, but now they're twice a month. If you speak favorably of your treatment, physically and metaphorically. If you want me to do it for you, people involved, let's say in religion, obvious example, will speak favorably of their treatment. People in psychiatric counseling and analysis will speak favorably of their treatment. If you speak favorably of the treatment, you do not want to get well. It's just one of the obvious facts of which the ordinary mind cannot conceive of without my help. And with my help it goes, what? Well, I offered. Well, think about it. If you speak highly of your treatment, if speaking of your treatment, and I'm assuming you could actually be sick, but if you like to stand around and gossip and think, oh, God, and you smile when you talk about how much it costs and how painful it is, and you smile while you talk about it, you don't want to get well. You may get well, but you'll get sick with something else. You do not want to get well. Those who speak highly or favorably of their religion, which is not going to cure their ill, but they speak highly or favorably of the treatment, they don't want to get well. Think about it. Or psychiatric, any kind of counseling. As I point out, they're not intended to, quote, succeed. They're not intended to cure. They're intended to treat. They're intended to keep everyone marching along enough to keep the mass parade in action. But it's not to cure somebody in there going, my feet hurt. I want to fly. I want to run. Boy, keep walking. Go ahead. Just keep walking. Don't be a smart ass. Don't engage in hubris. Can't fly. That's all you can do to walk. If it wasn't for our help, you couldn't even walk. The thing is, ordinary people, if they were presented in a certain way, as I pointed out, but here's a new punchline to it. If you take ordinary, sane, decent people, and they say that they're religious, and you ask them why, and they say, well, they pursue their religion because they want to be a better person. They feel sort of unworthy. They realize they have many flaws and shortcomings, and so they pursue faithfully their religion. And you say, well, has it cured it? And they go, well, no. Well, you can ask the same thing somebody in analysis. That same old story. I've been in analysis 20 years. And well, all right, what are the problem is? 20 years, I guess you're cured. Oh, no. And you wait for them to start bad-mouthing psychiatry or religion. But you know they're not ordinary sane people. They will speak favorably of the treatment, which is not working. That is, it is not affecting a cure. It is a treatment, and by that I mean it's a continuing hobby. It's a continuing expense. It's a continuing activity in which one may engage oneself. But if you speak highly, or if you speak favorably, in other words, you ask somebody, so you've been a faithful such and such religious person, yes. And you do all the things and do all the rituals, yes. But you're still as miserable, or you still feel as unworthy, you still are still itching and uncomfortable and disquieted as much as you were when you started. Taking into account, we couldn't do this, but I'm going to have to tell you, taking into account the severe decline in your hormonal drive. Never mind that. It makes it too complicated because it makes it too clear and transparent. And we do not want that. You ask the person, so you have been involved in your religion, yes, but you can't say that's actually cured you of being a sinner. It hasn't cured you of the things that disquiet your soul and your spirit. Well, no, I can't say that. And so you wait for them to start bad-mouthing the religion. But if they're ordinary insane, they will not. Or to bad-mouth psychiatry. Like, yeah, I'm glad I'm finally come to my senses. It took me 20 years of lighting those damn candles or going to that damn man's office, buying him new couches, new Mercedes. But boy, ordinary sane people will not badmouth. They will speak favorably. But you understand, you have brought them right up to the point of realizing what they're pursuing as a treatment has affected no cure, and so you wait for them to go, yeah, and I'm sick of it. They'll begin to beam. But if they speak favorably of it, you understand they're satisfied. They're not looking for a, quote, cure. There's only a few people on this planet want a cure, and most of them that even seriously want it, or sincerely are wired up to want it, the majority of them live out their days and never know what it is. They can listen to some idiot like me. I don't mean I'm necessarily a natural-born idiot. I may have had to work at it. No, not that. What I mean is engaging in sufficient idiocy to talk about anything even resembling this publicly is what I meant. Not that I personally am necessarily, but then again, who knows? It takes real ability to hear a shadow make noise. There are very few people ever find out what it is. Individually. The knowledge of what it is, the operational knowledge, is quite widespread. And I keep hitting on this as we do drive-by shootings and fender benders, and I leave the parking lot before any of you can get out and actually get my insurance card. So let me try it again tonight, part of it. The heart of all religious, all religious rituals, but especially the major religions, their basic rituals, are actually engaged based upon that missing piece. Prayer, worry beads, rosaries. There are two ways to look. Well, let me tell you exactly what. There are two ways a man, remember this guy down here I keep pointing at? I don't know whether it makes any sense to you guys on camera, at home on TV. But the guy who says, the guy who's actually involved with this, really believes he is. And we're taking his word for it. I mean, what the hell? Why would he have written this news item? So I'm taking his word for it. That he is seriously committed to it. And then one day he reflects that it's no wonder, historically, so many people, when they hear about this kind of activity, they think of it as being a secret endeavor. And he thinks, it suddenly struck him in your way, well, no wonder. It's understandable they think it's secret, because here I am, I consider myself to be one, and it's secret. That is, it's hidden from me. Maybe I should have made it hidden instead of secret. Of a hidden activity. He thinks, well, hell, it's hidden from me, except on a good day, maybe 2 or 3 times. I remember that I'm a mystic. The rest of the time, I may be thinking about it. That's real easy. That'll satisfy most people the same way that they will accept the psychiatric analysis for a cure, or they will accept the treatment of religious ritual for an actual success. You can think about being a mystic. You can think about being awake. You can think about what it would be not to be so much me. You can come up with new, apparently more specific, if not exotic terms for it, and think, this is you sitting around, you generically speaking. Here is you sitting around and you're thinking, I may not be up to the level of a Buddha or an Abraham or Confucius or Zoroaster, but at least, thinketh ye, as you sit there, at least, I don't just sit here and think about the kind of crap while you're sitting there doing these great thoughts. Let's say you got TV on, and you're watching all these people on talk shows, people arguing and worrying about how many people you sleep with or what your sex life is or whatever. And you think, well, at least, not trying to push the humble bit. I know I'm not perfect, but at least I don't sit here and think about that kind of stuff. At least I think, I hadn't reached that point of being actually more awake, but at least I think on more awakened matters. Would you like to play this game that they used to be when it's called, What's Wrong with This Picture? Does everybody remember that? When you was a little kid and you had a book and you had to find, like it'd be a chicken over there with 3 legs over in a corner of the drawing. This one's not hard to find. Well, yeah, it's real hard because it's right there in your face that here you sit. just TV, I just picked out, you read a movie, but TV, there you sit at home. You got a mystical book there that you've been reading. A new translation from a Dead Sea Scroll, some from the supposedly new discoveries of the Essenes or some mystery schools of Egypt. You're thinking mystical thoughts, reading mystical literature, and the TV's on, and there's some people up there hollering and screaming at each other about adultery and this and that. And you're sitting there, you glance a little, but you're mainly reading this because you're mainly a mystic. But I mean, today a mystic's got a TV, like everybody else. And so you're mainly reading this, but every now and then you glance up, but something strikes you, something really there about that makes you feel like you're even closer to it. Just whatever words that can do it from a book, and you go, oh God, you're so happy you found this, and at least found where you belong in life, even though you haven't reached it. I mean, hell, it took Buddha a long time. And you look at it and you think, yeah, I'm not there. But it's sort of comfort. And I'm not doing this as a sarcastic joke, because this does happen. When I said no sham humility, it's not that you sit there, I'll give you credit, my fictitious generic person, that you sit there suddenly feeling very superior, because that's why I threw in the part that you are aware of the fact, I am not awake, I am not fully conscious. You simply know that much. But then you glance up from the book and you see this going on with no particular offense to the people. It's not that anything new, but there they are hollering about their sex life or something. And you go, well, at least, just humbly to me, thank God, at least my mind does not stay just on stuff like that anymore. It stays on stuff like this. What's wrong with that picture? Of course, that's kind of a dirty, to call that whole scene I just described a picture, to say what's wrong with it. Inside the context of the frame, where I started describing it, would be the frame of the picture. Inside that frame, nothing's wrong. But if you're trying to get out of the frame, everything's wrong. Because if you're thinking about what they're doing, these ordinary people, if you're thinking about, at least, if you're thinking to yourself how you don't normally think about such as that, how much further will we have to go after that? You're thinking of it then. And it's not the specifics of what you're thinking of. You're just simply, you remember the boy that his claim to fame was that one cold morning, one freezing morning, he stuck his tongue to a passing train. Do I have to fill out, do I have to flesh in the picture more? So here it is. All of you. You went this way as soon as you left the Garden of Eden. The reason you had to leave is because you learned how to talk. And that silent, paradisical comfort station went, "O ye, be out of here." As soon as you learned to talk. So there you walked outside the gates. Gabriel slammed the door, or the angel, whoever it was. And there you are. What got you out of there was your tongue. Of course, but since it can't walk or lift weights or engage in dirty sexual acts or anything else interesting, your mind talks. So there you are, and the first thing people did, I'm going to suggest to you, is here it is, right outside the Garden of Eden, and suddenly they're faced by modern technology, as always. Here comes a flying train by, of infinite length, but here it comes by everybody one time. Train goes by, and like all kids do, because when you got thrown out of the garden, we were all kids, all humans, you went, because everybody heard, hey, don't ever stick your tongue up against a frozen lamp post or a mailbox. And you being the kid you were, every Adam and Eve, there's the train they go. Now picture, I was going to flesh it in a little bit. Now for the last 30 years, or if you want to look at man collectively, the last 10,000 years, unless you're making some individual effort right this second, or anything that you are is the only exception to what I'm about to present to you. The rest of the time, imagine you're running along by this train. Your tongue, you understand, is still stuck, huh? That is life. That is a mental activity. That is the state of consciousness of ordinary people. That's not my theory. I made up the picture. So that's one good thing about getting closer and closer to it, is I can say something like, well, that's not my theory. And somebody could be sitting here, an ordinary person, and go, that's not your theory. That's the craziest thing. It had to be yours. I'll wait and see if anybody else ever comes along with any statistics to back that up. So that's what's great about it. Because a real weird person, though, one of the few, could hear that and right then realize, well, I'll be goddamn. That's just as true. That's as true as your grandmother turning in a book late at the library and paying them even when they didn't check the date. It is true, true, true. It is true blue. Double blue true. And all you got to do is look and you go, oh shit. It's not a theory. This guy, you want to go back to him? He is trying not to be attached to that train, or attached to his tongue, which is attached to his mind, which is attached to the natural flow of consciousness. And he knows what it is by now. He knows the difference between being even ordinarily running along the train like this and even thinking about how great it is to be a mystic and be trying to fight your way away from this kind of crude, routine, mundane behavior. And all the time, you're still just running for your life. Well, so you're running for your life, you're running at the same rate of speed as the train. And this guy realizes what it is, and he thought to himself, well, it's no wonder that people think that the ability to pull one's tongue off this train is some great hidden activity. He thought, it's understandable they think that, because I'm involved with it, and it's hidden from me most of the day. Once or twice a day, I stop and go, oh my God. Phew. I was going to say something about the religious rituals. There's nothing in particular importance. I gave you a handful of them, of prayer and rosary beads and kneeling, prayer, meditation, chanting, the mantras. But here's a way to look at what we're talking about that I'm not putting direct words on. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. I'm just not. It's to produce rather than this common state of collective consciousness in which we're all born that passes for consciousness, wherein you understand when I said my generic made-up figure of the kid with tongue, that's everybody. If you're genetically sound, intellectually, you got a tongue stuck to a frozen train, and unless you can remember what's going on, only now, not yesterday, not coming up, not as soon as that program's off, you can only do it right this second. Other than that, you're running along beside the train. But there's nothing in your way. You can run along beside that train. You can look up in the dining cars. You can look up and maybe there's a library car there with people reading philosophical or mystical books. As you run along beside the train, the point is you can imagine any frigging thing you want to. Life will not interfere. All you got to do is keep your tongue, just keep running. Or those of you that are getting better at realizing what's going on, keep being drugged. I know ordinary people think life is a real bitch. What a great picture you just conjured up of a man having to run along forever next to a train. Yeah, right. If I go back and do another one tonight to point out, life is not a struggle. Death is. And obviously it's not. So there. Does that cover it? Only for a few. Everybody else, no, that doesn't cover it. No, you're just joking around. You're trying to jerk me around. Life is a bitch. No. Or they can say, well, my picture of having to run along with your tongue, your brain. They may even get smart enough to go, I bet you may even mean something other than one's tongue stuck to that train. You might be using that as one of those metacaths or meta thing, or one of those things you do. You might not even mean the tongue. So what? Is it going to help? No. Only a few people ever understand what it means, and what I was going to get at was, even without putting it in any real exact language, it is simply, as opposed to this common collective consciousness, this common state in which you are conscious, you can live, you can die, and it is so subtle, it is so obvious to tell people it takes no effort. The state you're in, PhD, literate in several languages, a Nobel Prize, or a guy with a 6th grade education, plumber's assistant. Your state of consciousness has nothing to do with you. Nothing. That cannot be proven. I wouldn't prove it if I could, etc. You know the rest of the warranty and the disclaimers. I don't know why I even bothered that, to tell people, well, that's not really true for everybody. The few people that could even hear it, it's a bigger waste of time of trying to beat them over the head. To say, well, let me just speak to a few people. That'll help a lot. Let me be real specific to just those of you who can hear it. All right? There is simply the collective state of consciousness in which you live. It's not a theory, that's why it's great. Because you can go, well, that's a theory if I ever heard one, and leave and forget about it. All you got to do is look at it. I did point out one thing. So what is a thing? What kind of thing is a thing that when it's examined, it disappears? To find out the state of collective consciousness, to see that there is something, or to see it's not you, is all you have to do is you look at it and it stops. It's like the world's biggest pansy-faced, chicken shit possum. How's that for? The collective consciousness of man scurrying about these little highways, and you suddenly try and look at it, and it just stops. It does more than stop. It disappears. Which may be where Lewis Carroll got the idea of finally the cat disappeared and all you saw was its eyes. Because when you stop and look, it's like suddenly, sometimes you can hear this whistle. It's like the shadow of a possum going. You think, where'd it go? There are two ways to approach that. The rituals I mentioned, some of them being a part of it. I know this is getting even vague for me, but what I'm about to say, I'm not going to intend to be any more specific tonight. There are two ways to look at it. One is to remind you to do a certain thing yourself, and another one is to remind yourself, the other possibility, to remind yourself that you normally do nothing and still everything's all right. Well, I'm going to press on and assume that somebody heard that in some way. Then consider how the religious and the metaphysical rituals, the more common ones, how they play themselves out. The idea of repeating the name of God, the idea of having even the worry beads and rosaries that you are saying a mantra to yourself with every breath. Get past the point that it's a pleasing act to some God. It had to do with an interference with the neural system. I'm giving them credit that whoever came up with the original one in any field, in any culture, in any religion. That's what it should have been. I'm just telling you the fact of that's where it arose. It was to jog one's self out of this common daily run next to the train and no awareness of it. You wake up in the morning and you're running next to the train. Or those of you getting better, the train's running through you. The idea of a prayer is something absolutely unnecessary. That every day I will get up and say, Dear God, dear Jehovah, dear Zeus, thank you for another great day. It's a good thing the gods will tolerate sarcasm, because how many people actually mean that? So you see, they pick out things that are insincere and unnatural to start with. The kind of people that's going to pray ordinarily figures life is a step on their dick anyway. And so for them to go, here's what you should do, is with every breath say, ah, sweet Jesus, or ah, sweet Moses, ah, sweet Jehovah, thank you for another beautiful day. And your tongue's about to, have spasm just to say it. Well, that's okay. But they even miss it. See, they miss the unintended humor there. They still miss it and will get up and do it. The point is, it was originally, or should have been, was an effort to jog one out of the habit of being oneself consciously. But then what does it, and we're not here to erect a new monument to Captain Irony, but what does it turn out being? Let's start off pretty simple. You adopt a ritual, you adopt a discipline, a method, chanting a certain name, a prayer. You do it to break up the habitual flow of your consciousness. And let's say that you're faithful to it. It'll take a while to build up. You have to keep going back to the teacher, go back to school, and they encourage you. They say, we know how hard it is. You go, well, I try to remember, and then it just slips my mind, and they'll pray for you, they'll chant, they'll rub oils on you, and they'll light new candles, they'll testify. Other people say, well, it took me, X number of months or years. But notice, so you stick with it, and sure enough, you get to the point that you can do it most of the time. What have you accomplished? You've got a new habitual thought pattern. I said it wasn't for the sake of irony, you knew that, but I still fear that you missed the more subtle beauty of it, and it gives you a place to get a finger hold on trying to climb the needle. Or Kilimanjaro. The sheer face of consciousness. Because anything you take as being from ordinary sources, that which life will make readily available. Anything that you take, even though it may not be said as that. Obviously, because I point out in religions, they say, well, and most people that undertake almost any so-called metaphysical or spiritual discipline, they believe it's either to please the gods correctly, directly, which is kind of / also compensate for the general fallacy and past sinful nature of man. It's either that or it's supposed to awaken some new spirit in you, that you're doing something new, that you find they say, well, here's what it is, you should be doing this, you should be doing these beads in your hand, and each time you pull a bead through here, through your fingers, you should say one of the 20 new names for God that we got, or 20 of the new attributes of a more conscious man. It'd be all kinds of things. They just sound, that's it. But what happens if you succeed at it? And succeed at it is that you can remember to do it constantly, right? And they go, yes. Those teaching it. And you go, wait a minute. Success is if I get to where I can do this all the time. With every, well, let's make it easy. That you should remember the name of Allah with each breath. Or just thank you, God, or whatever. And you say, all right, the point is, success is when with every breath I do that. And they go, certainly. They look like, are you crazy? Certainly that would be success. Is that success? So you got two possibilities. You try and do something to remind you that you are nothing but a tongue stuck to a frozen train going nowhere. A train going nowhere with anything of personal interest to you. To try and remember, to remind yourself to do something to stop it, or else to remind yourself of the fact that it takes place normally and you're not harmed by it. Which will it be? Is one better than the other? How can you keep one of them from becoming habit? Ha ha! And you thought I wasn't going to tell a joke tonight. You missed it! Well, I can't let you miss it. I've told it before in other ways. It's like somebody going, if there was some mystical school somewhere that was teaching that you should repeat the name of God with every breath, let's say. Being literally impossible to remember to do it. But then one day a guy comes back that's been studying there a while, shows up periodically and buys new books and asks for reassurance. And one day he shows up looking sort of frantic and wild and says, you've got to help me. He gets to the head of the school and he says, what's wrong? He says, I can't quit remembering the name of God with every breath. Do you want it cruder? Help! I can't stop being more conscious. Of course, that brings up in this thing last possibility. Now that I've made up this scene, student who's been involved with this school runs up one day, finds the head guy, and he grabs him by his little robes and says, what's happened? What's happened to me? And the head man says, well, what do you mean? He says, well, after all these years of trying to remember the name of God with every breath, yes, I know how hard you've worked. We all work. Yes, but wait, let me finish. It's now the point that I can't stop remembering the name of God with every breath. In other words, I can't stop being more conscious. I can't stop having continual awareness that I am conscious. Now the interesting possibility, since none of that would happen, but now you go ahead and play it. What would the head of this school, which I'm not saying that he was even conscious, I'm not inferring that, what would he do once he heard that from this guy? Now first you'd think that he would take off his robe and give it to this guy and say, Master. There are one or two old stories in so-called mystical literature about that. But God, they sure are short. They sure are infrequent of an erstwhile master suddenly bowing. Well, they even got thrown in that one story, not quite as directly through, in the Old and New Testament in our part of the world, of prophets coming and always saying, well, there'll be a greater prophet afterwards. But they never stuck around. They never said, oh, there he is. And it's a nice idea because it does represent a kind of progression of an evolution of consciousness. But those who are individually, those who are alive and believe that it has some personal pertinence to them, that is someone who would go, well, I'm more conscious than you are. I mean, what else do I have to say about them? So now the story is, my story, here's the head of this questionable school, being charitable here at the end. And one of his questionable students rushes up and says, it's reached the point I can't stop being more conscious. In other words, inferring like, help me, this is, I can't stop being more conscious. And at first you think, wait a minute. The head guy would then hand him the scepter, the throne, the robe. Would he? No. What would he do if all this happened? Got a better question. What if you find there's a part of you that can be conscious? No, you don't hear that. No, you don't. It's easier just to think about it. Since I was getting charitable here at the end of the tape, until I can think up something else new to say about it, I'd rather leave on kind of a positive and cheerful note with everyone. It's easier just to think about all this than it is to, it's to think about it rather than try to, cut off the tape. I don't want to think about it.